The possibility of a war between the United States and China, once dismissed as unthinkable, is now a serious topic of discussion among policymakers and analysts. This alarming shift reflects the growing tensions between the world's two superpowers. The relationship, strained by trade disputes and military maneuvering, has entered a dangerous phase. The stakes could not be higher, with global stability and economic prosperity hanging in the balance. For decades, the assumption was that growing economic ties between the US and China would prevent conflict. However, recent events have shattered this optimism. Instead of cooperation, we are witnessing a descent into suspicion and hostility. Many experts now warn of a new Cold War, with the US and China locked in a struggle for global dominance. Competition is playing out on multiple fronts, from trade and technology to military and diplomatic influence. The risk of miscalculation is high, and even a small incident could spiral into a larger confrontation. The consequences of a US-China war are almost too terrible to contemplate. It would be devastating for both countries and would plunge the world into chaos. It is imperative that we find a way to manage this rivalry responsibly and prevent it from escalating into open conflict. The roots of the current tension can be traced back to the trade war initiated by the Trump administration in 2018. The US imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, accusing China of unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft. China retaliated with its own tariffs on US products. This tit-for-tat exchange of tariffs had a significant impact on both economies. Businesses and consumers felt the pain of higher prices, and global supply chains were disrupted. While the Biden administration has taken a less confrontational approach, many of the tariffs remain in place. Beyond trade, the US is increasingly concerned about China's growing military might and its assertive behavior in the Indo-Pacific region. China has been rapidly modernizing its military, investing heavily in advanced weapons systems, including hypersonic missiles and aircraft carriers.
China is the only competitor potentially capable of combining its economic, diplomatic, military, and technological power to challenge a stable and open international system, US President Joe Biden stated in his 2022 National Security Strategy. This statement reflects the growing unease in Washington about China's ambitions.
The US military is taking the possibility of conflict with China very seriously. The Pentagon has shifted its focus from counter-terrorism operations to great power competition, with China as its primary concern. The US is strengthening its military presence in the Indo-Pacific region, deploying more troops, ships, and aircraft.
We are seeing a very deliberate and very aggressive China, Admiral John Aquilino, then commander of the US Indo-Pacific Command, said in 2021. We must be prepared to confront them militarily if necessary.
The US is also working to modernize its nuclear arsenal and develop new technologies such as hypersonic weapons to maintain its military edge over China. The US is also strengthening alliances with countries in the region such as Japan, South Korea, and Australia. These alliances are seen as crucial to deterring Chinese aggression and maintaining stability in the region. The US is also increasing military aid to Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory. The Biden administration has stressed the importance of diplomacy and dialogue with China, but it has also made it clear that the US will not back down from defending its interests and those of its allies. This dual-track approach of engagement and deterrence is intended to prevent conflict while also preparing for the possibility. China views the US as a declining power trying to contain its rise. Beijing sees its military buildup as a necessary response to US actions. China's activities in the South China Sea have raised tensions with the US. We seek to safeguard world peace and oppose hegemonism, said President Xi Jinping. However, China's actions often speak louder than its words. China's growing naval presence and military bases show its global ambitions. The current state of US-China relations has drawn comparisons to the Cold War. Unlike the Soviet Union, China is a major economic power integrated into the global economy. This economic interdependence creates both opportunities and challenges.
This is not the Cold War, but it is a competition that will define the 21st century, said Kurt Campbell. We need to be clear-eyed about the challenges we face.
The US and China are not ideological rivals in the same way as the US and the Soviet Union. There are several potential flashpoints in the US-China relationship. The most dangerous of these is Taiwan. China has vowed to reunify with Taiwan, by force if necessary. The US has a long-standing commitment to Taiwan's defense. The South China Sea is another potential flashpoint. China claims almost the entire sea as its own. The US conducts regular freedom of navigation operations. Any incident involving US and Chinese ships or aircraft could escalate. Despite the tensions, there are ongoing diplomatic efforts to manage the US-China relationship and prevent conflict. The two countries have established various channels of communication, including regular meetings between high-level officials. The US and China have also cooperated on issues of mutual interest, such as climate change and nuclear non-proliferation. However, these diplomatic efforts face significant challenges. There is a deep lack of trust between the two countries, and each side views the other's actions with suspicion. The US is concerned about China's lack of transparency and its unwillingness to abide by international rules and norms. China, for its part, sees the US as trying to maintain its global dominance and prevent China from achieving its rightful place in the world. The Biden administration has pursued a strategy of strategic competition with China, seeking to compete vigorously in areas like technology and innovation while also cooperating on issues of common interest. However, it remains to be seen whether this approach will be successful in managing the relationship and preventing conflict. The US and China are deeply intertwined economically. China is America's largest trading partner, and the two countries' economies are deeply integrated. This economic interdependence creates both opportunities and challenges for managing the relationship. On the one hand, the close economic ties between the US and China provide a strong incentive to avoid conflict. A war between the two countries would be devastating for both economies and would have a ripple effect throughout the global economy. Businesses and consumers in both countries benefit from trade, and there is a strong interest in maintaining economic stability. On the other hand, economic interdependence can also be a source of leverage. China could use its economic power to try to influence US policy or punish the US for actions it dislikes. The US could also use economic sanctions or other measures to try to change China's behavior. This weaponization of economic ties could further escalate tensions and increase the risk of conflict. This weaponization of economic ties could further escalate tensions and increase the risk of conflict. This weaponization of economic ties could further escalate tensions and increase the risk of conflict. The escalating tensions between the US and China have profound implications for global stability and the world order. A conflict between the world's two superpowers would have devastating consequences, not just for the two countries directly involved, but for the entire world. Economically, a US-China war would plunge the global economy into chaos. Trade would be disrupted, supply chains would be broken, and financial markets would crash. The cost of living would skyrocket, and millions of people would be thrown into poverty. Politically, a US-China war would shatter the existing world order. Alliances would be broken, international institutions would be weakened, and the rules-based system that has governed international relations for decades would be in tatters. The world would be divided into competing camps, and the risk of further conflict would increase dramatically. The potential consequences of a US-China war are so severe that it is essential for both countries to find a way to manage their rivalry peacefully. The path forward in US-China relations is fraught with challenges, but it is not impossible to find a way to coexist peacefully and manage the rivalry responsibly. Both sides must recognize that a war would be disastrous and that cooperation is essential to address common challenges. Dialogue and diplomacy must be at the forefront of efforts to improve relations. Regular high-level meetings, confidence-building measures, and a willingness to address each other's concerns are crucial. Both sides need to be willing to listen to each other's perspectives and find common ground. Economic interdependence should be seen as a stabilizing factor, not a weapon. The US and China should work together to ensure a level playing field in trade and investment, and to address concerns about unfair trade practices. Cooperation on issues like climate change and global health can also help to build trust and foster a more constructive relationship. Ultimately, the future of US-China relations depends on whether both sides can overcome their differences and find a way to coexist peacefully.